Kimmelman here with the National Sports Media Association, and today I am joined by the 2023 Kansas Sportscaster of the Year and the voice of the Jayhawks, Brian Hanni. Brian, how are you today?
Scotty, I'm doing great. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Yeah, great. Thanks for joining. Appreciate the time. And before we get into your whole broadcasting career, working for the Jayhawks and all of that, as well as your career before that, I want to ask what got you into sportscasting in the first place?
I think like a lot of us, I was an athlete growing up, always wanted to do something in sports, but came to the realization at about age 16 or so that my vertical leap wasn't very tall and my speed and side to side quickness was pretty slow. And I was probably going to have to find something else to stay close to the game of baseball, basketball, football. And so I always had the gift of gab as a kid. I did some stuff on stage theatrically as a kid. And so I always had a little bit of a stage presence. And so I thought, what are my gifts? What are my passions? How do I get these to align? And thankfully, sportscasting was the ticket there. And I was really blessed. I had a high school teacher that saw the ambition that I had to do play by play when I was just a junior in high school.
Mhm.
And he tailor made the TV productions class at Topeka West back in
Yeah.
1996 to fit my ambition. And I think
Mm.
we should all be so lucky to have an educator that sees ambition, and maybe it's not the run of the mill standard thing, but they go out and tailor make a game plan or an educational path to allow their students to chase their dreams. I was really lucky Corey Wilson did that for me. And
Yeah.
as a result, here I am still living my dream all these years later.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's amazing to hear. And you graduated from the University of Kansas in 2002. You said you went to Topeka in high school. And 14 years after that, you finally got your dream job to become the voice of the Jayhawks. But before I get into your time working for the Jayhawks, I want to ask, what was the process like to get to where you wanted to be?
Well, I was really fortunate during my time at Kansas as a student, had a chance to tap into the mentorship of some great sportscasting minds, including the guy that literally wrote the book, The Art of Sportscasting, Tom Hedrick. He was
Mm.
my broadcast professor at KU. He was a former voice of the Jayhawks, the Huskers, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Cincinnati Reds, big time broadcast talent. He also mentored Kevin Harlan, who later in
Mm.
my career, probably 15 years later, I had a chance to get to know, and he was a key piece in me getting this job as well. But
Mm.
even as a student at KU, Ryan Lefevre, who's the TV voice of the Kansas City Royals, he was instrumental. I had some great encouraging words from a previous Kansas voice in Max Falkenstein, who sadly is no longer with us, but he did the
Mm.
Jayhawk games for 60 years. So learning from him was a treat. But I think it was all about just soaking up, whatever I could get from those guys and then hitting the ground running as a 20 something young broadcast professional here in Lawrence. I was fortunate to get
Yeah.
to stay and work for the flagship station. And I was doing women's basketball and baseball for KU and a daily sports show and
Mhm.
filling in on the men's broadcast whenever there was a football conflict, which happened about 15 times in the 10 years that I was here. And they told me at the time, hey, we like your stuff. We like what you're about and how you would represent us. But realistically, you probably need to go out into the world and get a men's job somewhere else in order to one day come back home. And
Yeah.
thankfully, I was really fortunate that had a great friend at Texas Tech and Mark Finkner, who was stepping down from the men's basketball role there. And because we had bonded over our shared passions of broadcasting and faith and things like that, he actually tipped me off to his resigning before anybody else, even his own boss, knew. So I had a chance to
Mhm.
kind of hit the ground running and put together a great portfolio, both visually and audibly, on what I would look and sound like as the Texas Tech guy. And
Yeah.
that led to 4 years of doing basketball and baseball down there. Got to do a little football pregame back when Patrick Mahomes was at Texas Tech, which was
Yeah.
fun as well. And then all the while, living in Lubbock, Texas, I'm still networking and staying in touch with people back home in Kansas. I actually had a daily sports feature that ran every single day of the year for all 4 years that I was gone back here in the Sunflower State so that I would stay top of mind awareness in the minds of the Kansas fans while also still throwing everything I had into that Texas Tech job. My boots were firmly planted in West Texas. Let's be clear. I made that a dream job while I was there. But my
Mm.
family is from Kansas, and obviously my childhood was here. And so when the opportunity knocked and I had a chance to come back home and work with Bill Self and some of the great coaches we have here, clearly I had to take it. But every move I've made, every opportunity I've been blessed to have is one that I'm supremely grateful for. And all the people that helped me get to that point are ones that I count my blessings every day and think about them for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, thank you for that. And now as you've got your job at Kansas, you finished through Texas Tech. You're in your eighth year now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And I'm sure a lot has happened since then. Can you tell me a specific moment, and this can be at Kansas, this can be at Texas Tech or beforehand. Can you tell me a specific moment that you remember where you thought, wow, I really made it as a broadcaster, and I'll never forget this?
I think getting a chance to do my first Final Four in
Mm,
2018, the game that clinched the Final Four. I don't want to talk about
mm,
the Final Four itself because we were down 23-4 like that. But
yeah.
the game that clinched going to the Final Four was an overtime win over Duke. And winning
Mhm,
that game in Omaha in the Elite Eight, seeing the celebration on the floor, getting to put the hat on, feeling like, wow, not only am I living the dream at my alma mater, the most
mm,
tradition rich basketball school in the country, but we're getting to go to the Final Four. As I
mhm.
referenced, the game didn't go that great once we got down to the Final Four. Villanova boat raced us pretty good, but
Right.
we had a chance 4 years later to go back, and 4 years later had a chance to win it all and have the winning call. And you don't set out to have your winning call turn into a book, but it's a banner year for Kansas basketball, became the inspiration for the book Banner Year, and had a chance to work on that as well. So there have been plenty of pinch yourself kind of moments. The fact that we've had a chance to do back-to-back bowl games with KU football
Mm,
and the ascension of that program under Lance Leipold has been a huge, huge thrill as well. But no doubt, the first Final Four call was probably the one I'll always remember. And then the first national championship call. And I say first because Bill Self has us in the hunt every year. It's
mhm.
funny how faces change, but expectations never do here at KU Hoops. They'll be preseason number one next year. So hopeful you get another chance at some point to call another national championship game. But you never know. And as good as Kansas was throughout the 90s with Roy Williams, as great
Mm,
as Bill Self was winning 14 straight Big 12 titles, we went a while in between the 88 title in 2008 and 2008 and 2022. So you certainly savor those moments when you get them. You never take anything for granted. Much in the same way that I'm looking forward to NSMA weekend and savoring that opportunity, because what a great gift that is, and a chance to
mhm.
be around a lot of my peers, but also guys that are some of my broadcast heroes. And so I'll be soaking up every minute of that special weekend out there in North Carolina, and definitely looking around and pinching myself in that moment too, to be with such a collection of hardworking broadcast professionals and have a chance to meet Dave and everybody like yourself, Scotty,
Mhm.
have a chance to see everybody up front and center. That's going to be a really special weekend, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, hopefully we get to connect when I go there later this
Yeah.
summer. But next I want to ask you more specifically about your charity event that you host called the Rock Chalk Roundball Classic, cancer fundraiser you founded. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of how that began and the success you guys have had with that, and kind of how that has transformed?
Man, thanks a lot for asking that question and the chance to share about that here. It's been the biggest, most fulfilling passion project of my life. The games that we do for football, basketball, and baseball are a blast. There's nothing
Mm,
when it comes to exhilarating feelings like calling a game winning shot or something like that. But
mhm,
in terms of fulfilling work, when you have a chance to take your platform in the broadcast realm and utilize that to create a little bit of good in the community around you, that's the stuff that makes me feel like I'm
mm,
planted where I need to be and doing what I need to do. And to give you a real quick backstory, I read a book when I was closer to your age, Scotty, called Roaring Lambs. And it talks
mm,
about how sometimes God elevates people to positions of influence in the secular realm, whether it be media, politics, entertainment, whatever, so that they might use that platform to bear fruits and make positive things happen in the
mm,
community around them. And so I was in my mid 20s. I read that and I thought, what's my circle of influence? Well, I had a radio show and a little bit of an online following. Who are
mhm,
my contacts? Well, I have all these former Jayhawk basketball players that I have a decent relationship with now through years of interviewing them and telling their stories on the air. And then, what's a cause or an impact I'd like to make? And there was a local youth pastor in town who reached out. His son-in-law had lost his leg, a leg amputation to cancer, and sadly it had metastasized throughout the rest of his body.
mm,
His time was limited, and yet the medical bills were mounting. And this
Right.
family came to me and said, what can you do to help? And I just read this book and I was already evaluating what can I do to make a bigger impact?
Hmm.
And that's when the brainchild for the Roundball Classic came together 16 years ago. And it's
Yeah.
obviously grown a ton since its humble beginnings back in 2009. But we've been able to bless over 125 families. We've raised
Wow.
1.5 million heading into this summer, and
Wow.
really excited to see the way the game's grown. We've had over 150 different former Jayhawk basketball and football players come back. We've been featured on Sports Center several times. Maybe I'll have a
Wow.
chance to network at NSMA and get another
Yeah.
Sports Center plug. But we've had some cool moments taking the focus and putting it on these pediatric cancer patients. Yes, it's star power out the wazoo of KU, who's who, but it's about the kids. And the best part
Hmm.
of the weekend, which is now a game, a gala, and a bowling event as well. The best part is when you line up 40 or 50 all-time Jayhawk greats and they form a tunnel. And then these kids that are currently in the fight of their lives, dealing with
Yeah.
various forms of cancer, come running through the tunnel, getting the high fives, and they're announced over the PA with the lights turned out and the spotlights blaring at guard, standing in at 2 feet 6 inches tall, a 6 year old from Topeka, that kind of thing. The
Right.
kids feel like the stars of the show. And so all the hard work, and this is truly something we work on year round, all the 12 months of build up is made well worth the while in those 5 minutes of PA reads and starting lineup mentions, because that's when these kids, for just a few moments, aren't thinking about chemotherapy or radiation
Mm.
or any treatment that they've had to go through. They're the star of the show. To see
Yeah.
Bill Self bouncing a 6 year old cancer patient on his knee like a grandpa would, and watching the game, and she's just beaming from ear to ear. And you know what? He is too. That's the best part for me. So it's been a real blessing in my life to see that unfold in the fashion that it has. And I always say we'll do it so long as I have air in my lungs, because it's the best thing we do year round,
Mm.
no doubt. And it's coming up. It's going to be here in just a matter of weeks. So thank you so much, Scottie, for asking about that.
Yeah, of course. No, I mean that's amazing. I'm really glad to have heard about that. I'm glad I asked. That really is amazing work you guys are doing there. And lastly, I want to ask, I'm an aspiring young broadcaster. I know there are so many out there in the industry that have very big plans on what they want to do later on. But I want to ask for you specifically, if there's any advice you would give to someone like myself or those other kids just like me who want to be a broadcaster or want to be in this industry, what would you want to tell them to help them?
Well, I think that there's plenty of things we could say, but if I could boil it down into 2 minutes, it would be, first off, always say yes to any opportunity that comes your way. Ryan
Mm.
Russillo, formerly of ESPN, is the one that
Mhm.
taught me this. And I heard it in an interview one day he did, where back in his ascension up through the ranks at ESPN, he was working some graveyard overnight shifts, and noticed that the first time anybody turned one of those down, they would ask the next guy on the list. And if he fulfilled the obligation or the task at hand, who do you
Mhm.
suppose they started with that ask the next time? The person that came through for him, right? And,
Right.
and so I always tell my broadcast students, always make yourself available. Say yes, no matter what hour a day or how big of an opportunity it seems to be. You have to be able to humble yourself a little bit at the beginning. You don't expect to come in and call NBA basketball right out the shoot or whatever the case might be.
Hmm.
For our broadcast students here at Kansas, you don't expect to sit courtside at Allen Fieldhouse right away. You got to earn your way into that. But always
Right.
be dependable, reliable, and hardworking. Take initiative to do not just what's expected of you, but go above and beyond. But the big thing is networking, and take the time to make the extra touch. And by that I mean, you know, if you go for a job, Scotty, once you're done with your NSMA work and your schooling, there'll probably be 300 people sending the same application link that you're clicking on, attaching their
Hmm.
audio files and their resume and all that stuff. How do you stand out? And I'm a big believer in the handwritten notes, going above and beyond with some sort of way to stand out. One of the greatest examples of standing out was Denny Matthews, who's the legendary
Mm.
voice of the Kansas City Royals. As the
Yeah.
story goes, when he got the Royals job, gosh, over 50 years ago, he knew that their number one sponsor was this company called Schlitz Beer. And so
Mm.
rather than just sending in his demo tape, which back then was probably on a cassette reel, and there was probably a
Mm.
stack this tall of these demo tapes coming in, he sent to the decision maker a 6-pack of Schlitz beer, not because he thought he needed a buzz to listen to his tape, but because he wanted to show them, I know where your bread is buttered. I know who our top sponsor is. Okay. I also
Wow.
know and want you to know that I'm creative and I'm going to stand out from the pack. And then finally, I want you to listen to my tape first. So, in this
Mm,
sea, this mountain of demo tapes that had come in for the Royals job, which tape do you suppose they popped in the tape player first? The one that
right.
was wedged in between 6 bottles of Schlitz beer, their number one sponsor. So I've done a few things like that, not with beer, but with some other tangible leave behinds to get the attention of decision makers. I think in order for yourself creative to do something to stand, how good you sound or how great you get lost in the sea of really good competition. So don't be afraid to take some chances, be a little bit creative, always follow or some kind of personal follow up. Don't just send an email. Not that emails aren't effective. I just think they get, you got to find separate
Right.
competitive with podcasting. Always been a little winning the stand.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. I think I might have lost you there, but oh, there we go. Great. Well, that's an amazing answer to that. I
I think
really appreciate the time. No, there we go. No, we're all good now. But yeah, there we go.
there we go. Did it cut out during that response?
No, just like maybe the last 20 seconds, but I think we got the chunk of it. Um,
This,
but
okay.
yeah, no, yeah, we got all of that. But no, I just want to thank you again for that amazing last advice. All those, amazing stories to hear about your past and what you've gone through, and what you've done in your career. I really appreciate the time. And congratulations
Hey,
on your award as well, too. And yeah,
thanks a lot, Scottie. Certainly excited to watch your career unfold. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, please let me know. But I can tell you got a bright future in front of you. So thank you again for the time today.
yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.